Welcome to another episode of Weathering the Storms of Life with the Rainses. Rob Rains, Sally Tippett Rains with you. Our guest host today, Ellie Rains, our little puppy dog who's spending the quarantine with us here at home. She's going to go run off and do something else. So appreciate everybody joining in again. I hope you've been enjoying some of the quiz programs as well. We've got a good one for you today. Questions about Leave It to Beaver coming out from our good friend Gene Ackman, who did the Andy Griffith quiz last week. You got a couple things you want to say about Choose Happy?
Just our daily quote from that we're starting to do with this is actually from Abraham Lincoln. I want it said of me by those who knew me best that I always plucked a thistle and planted a flower where I thought a flower would grow. So now in this time of thistles everywhere, let's all start planting flowers.
About time, not quite time to start planting flowers outside.
Oh, definitely not outside
No.
yet, but I just meant in our life.
All right, so here are the quiz questions. You can either get out a piece of paper and jot down your answers as we go along. We'll go through the questions first, and then we will give you the answers at the end, or you just think about them in your head as we go along. You don't have to keep score because we're not giving prizes, but hopefully this is just something that you're enjoying doing as we get through the quarantine here together. Question 1, Leave It to Beaver from Gene Ackman. What was Beaver's last name on the show?
Beaver's last name on the show. Question 2, what was Beaver's real first name
On the show.
on the show?
Yes. Jerry was his real first name in real life.
Jerry Mathers.
Yes, correct. But that's not
As
the same
the
name.
Beaver.
Not the same name on the show. Question 3, what fictional town did the Beaver and his family live in? The name of the fictional town referenced several times on the show.
Number 4, what was Wally's wisecracking but polite to adults friend's name?
Mhm.
Wally's friend that was always super polite to adults.
Question 5, about that same gentleman, what was his middle name on the show? The wisecracking, fun-loving friend of Wally, what was his middle name on the show?
All right, let's start remembering some of the other characters. What was Wally's friend's name that wore the thick Coke bottle glasses?
Bonus
Kid-
point if you can give his last name.
Okay.
I
the
remember
kid
his
that wore
first
the
name.
thick
I
glasses.
did not remember his last name. Did remember his first name.
I actually had glasses pretty much like his.
Me too. Question 7, Wally's friend Lumpy's last name on the show. That's
Not this
Sally's
again.
favorite character of all time. I'll leave it to Beaver was his friend, Wally's friend Lumpy.
We had to actually redo this thing, and partly is because I fell apart laughing.
So I'll keep reading the Lumpy questions to keep her out of the conversation. There. Lumpy's dad worked in the same office as Beaver's dad. What was his first name on the show? You come together now. You can.
What
go
was
on with the next
Beaver's
question.
fireman's friend's name? No, my sister and me, we loved Leave It to Beaver, and we just always laughed.
I know, but you're not going to be all choke up about the fireman's name.
No,
Okay.
I'm not going to say what his name is, but what was Beaver's friend that was a fireman? What was his name?
Question 10. Speaking of names, Beaver had a grade school teacher. It seemed like for most of the years of the show, I guess she kind of moved up each year with him. What was her name on the show? Beaver's favorite teacher on the show. Her name.
And Beaver also had another teacher at the beginning of the series that he also liked. And what was her name? The other teacher that was mentioned.
First teacher, I guess. Yeah. At the
We were
beginning of the
talking
show.
about that. He had like two teachers the whole time, so they must have either moved up with him
Yeah.
or
A flaw in the show, maybe.
a flaw. in the
Question 12. The principal of Beaver School. Now, she didn't have to move up, but she had a name on the show. They referenced her several times. What was her name on the show? And the next question is a bonus point. If you knew her last name, but do you also know her first name? Beaver's principal's name, full name on the show.
Question number 14. What was the name of Beaver's school? Remember back then they didn't call them elementary schools, they
Yep.
call them grammar schools.
Question 15. In one of the episodes, Beaver and Wally sent off in the mail for an alligator, and they raised that alligator for a brief period of time. What did they name the alligator? What was the name of Beaver and Wally's alligator?
Okay, and now we're going to remember another one of their little friends. Beaver had a friend named Whitey. What was Whitey's last name?
How about his friend Gilbert? What was Gilbert's last name on the show? That's question 17. Another friend of Beaver's was Larry. What was Larry's last name on the show?
And number 19, if you were watching one of them from a few days ago, I actually gave you this answer. What did Larry always seem to have in his pocket of his jacket? What did Larry always have in his pocket?
One more Larry question. That's number 20. Larry's dad almost always seemed to be out of town on the show. Where were most of his business trips? What city was Larry's dad most of the time when it was mentioned on the show?
You might not be able to remember, but as soon as you hear it, you'll be like, oh, yeah, I can picture Mrs. Mondello saying that.
Mm-hmm. What was Beaver's mom's name on the show? That's question 21. Beaver's mom's name on the show, first and last name.
Number 22, this is a tough one. What was her maiden name?
Mm-hmm.
What was the mom's
I
maiden
have to
name?
admit I did not know that question. And question 23, and the final question about Leave It to Beaver, what was Beaver's dad's name on the show? Beaver's dad's name on the show. Thanks again to Gene Ackman for the questions. If you've got some ideas, we did have one come in the other day from one of our friends that submitted some questions, which we'll be getting to on a future edition of the show. So shoot us an email, stlsportspage@gmail.com, if you have some ideas for future quiz programs as we kind of do some of these each week to help us get through the quarantine period and hopefully encouraging everybody to stay at home and stay safe.
Actually, the ones that I just got was from Michelle Carter, and I'm excited about that one. It was kind of like, where did you go to high school? There are questions about the Catholic girls' schools, Catholic boys' schools, and we threw in some public school questions too. So
Well,
that
we're coming
sounds
up
fun.
on a future edition of the program. All right, here are the answers to Leave It to Beaver. Question 1, Beaver's last name on the show, Cleaver. Question 2, Beaver's real first name on the show was Theodore.
Theodore Cleaver.
Fictional town the family lived in was Mayfield, although I don't ever remember them referencing a state, just the city.
I don't think they did reference the state. Tell you the truth, just small town America.
Mm-hmm. Wally's wisecracking but polite to adults friend, Eddie Haskell, who I believe in real life grew up to become a police officer, if I'm not mistaken.
Remember, every time he would say something to the mom, she'd be like, Eddie.
Eddie's middle name was Clark, Edward Clark Haskell. Wally's friend who wore thick Coke bottle glasses was Tooey. Tooey Brown actually was his full name.
Tooey Brown.
Can you do the next one without laughing?
Lumpy Rutherford. Wally's friend Lumpy's last name was Lumpy Rutherford. And let's see, he had a sister named Violet Rutherford.
He did. And the dad's name, who worked in the same office as Beaver's dad, was Fred Rutherford.
I forgot what the mom's name was, though.
Don't remember her.
Oh, somebody out there knows right now.
Beaver's fireman friend was Gus the fireman.
Gus the fireman was old the first day he was on, and he was still old. He was the same age the whole time,
Never got
wasn't
any
he?
younger. Yeah, never
No,
got
but
younger.
he was the neatest guy. Remember him? He would just have all that wise
old
advice.
soul, yep.
Yeah.
Beaver's teacher's name was, for most of the years of the program, Miss Landers. His first teacher on the show, actually, though, was Miss Canfield.
And the principal, number 12, the principal was Miss Rayburn. And her first name was Cornelia. So she was Cornelia Rayburn. Boy, when he had to go to the principal's office, she was scary, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm. Name of Beaver School was the Grant Avenue School. The name of the alligator that they sent off for and raised was Captain Jack. Whitey Whitney was his friend Whitey's last name was Whitney. That was question 16. Question 17, Gilbert's last name was most times referred to on the show as Gilbert Bates, but according to Gene, occasionally they mentioned his name as Gilbert Gates. So I don't know if that was just a typo or what.
I remember when I used to watch the show, whenever Gilbert would show up on the screen,
I
you
can
knew they
picture
were
him.
going to get in
I
big
can
trouble.
picture Gilbert, for
Gilbert
sure.
was always causing some stuff.
Beaver's friend Larry's last name was Larry Mondello.
Larry Mondello, and he had always had an apple in his pocket.
And I think one of the interesting stories that we heard about Larry, and that somebody told us this recently, was that when they actually were trying to do a reunion show of some of the Leave It to Beaver characters, they were having trouble finding a gentleman named Rusty Stevens, who was the character who played Larry Mondello as a kid. And then they finally had a private detective track him down to somewhere in New Jersey. Went and knocked on the door, and his wife answered the door, and the detective told her what he was looking for, who he was looking for, and that he was on this Leave It to Beaver show as a child. And she goes, "Oh no, that's not my husband. That's his name, but that's not my husband." And so they left, and then she went in and talked to her husband. He goes, "Well, yeah, that was me. I was on the show." He just never told anybody about it. So,
That's crazy.
crazy, yeah. So I guess part of the reason why they didn't get residual TV money, so there wasn't really any reason for him to keep knowing the fact that
Right.
he.
And Rusty, maybe that was like his childhood name. Maybe
Could
he
have
had a
been.
different name and
Yeah.
didn't want to
So-
be that chubby apple-eating kid all the
Yeah,
rest
what
of
if he
his
still
life.
liked apples? Yeah. Larry's dad, the question 20, Larry's dad was always out of town in Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati, yeah.
Cincinnati.
Don't you remember that?
The question 21, Beaver's first mom's name on the show was June Cleaver.
And her maiden name, I didn't remember this, but was June Bronson.
Mm-hmm.
What was her aunt's name? Now I'm putting you on the spot. Was it Aunt Martha or
Aunt Martha, I do believe is correct.
She was
That
always
sounds
sending
right.
like terrible clothes for Christmas. That
I believe Martha is correct, if I remember right.
and that might not be it. So if anybody remembers, let us
Well, that
know.
was
But that
not an official question.
yeah.
Gene would know. Question 23, Beaver's dad's name on the show, of course, was Ward. Ward was always worried about the Beaver. So that's today's show here. We'll leave it to Beaver. Thanks again to Gene Ackman for the questions. Thanks for you for joining in here on Weathering the Storm of Life with the Ranges. Keep tuned for another edition of our show here real soon on STLSportsPage.com and RainbowsForKids.org.